Hi, this is Marcus Fairs, broadcasting live from the Dezeen studio in London. Today we're discussing the circular economy in a talk titled A Journey Towards Carbon Neutral Buildings with flooring brand Tarkett. I'm joined by Myriam Tryjefaczka, who is EMEA Sustainability and Public Affairs Director at Tarkett. Hi, Myriam.
Hello, Marcus.
And architect Adam Stridwick, who is Principal of Corporate Interiors at Perkins and Will. Hi there, Adam.
Hi, Marcus. Hi, Myriam.
Hello, Adam.
So first of all, Myriam, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you and what do you do?
So I joined Tarkett 5 years ago after several experiences in quality, environment, sustainability, and public affairs, which fits with my personal expectations and is in line with my biochemistry background. I'm really pleased to be with you today, Adam and Marcus, and I am sitting in a very special place. This is L'Atelier Tarkett in Paris. It is an inspirational place dedicated to architects and designers where we showcase our products.
Fantastic. And the circular economy, why have we chosen this for the topic today? What does the circular economy mean to you and to Tarkett?
Yes, so as you may know, Tarkett is an international player. And with the scale of an international player, we can be really a driving force for change and make a positive impact. So let me explain you how circular economy is really part of our strategy and how we have implemented it at Tarkett. Everything starts with eco-designing products for recycling and disassembly with good materials that are healthy for people and the environment. We are, of course, good stewards of resource in our operations, and we strive to increase the recycled content in our products. Our products are long-lasting, so they will remain for a long time in the buildings, and we have developed our restart programs for collecting flooring since more than 10 years. And so far, we have collected 105,000 tons of waste. For closing the loop, we have developed as well our own technologies, and we partner with like-minded companies. We made a radical decision 10 years ago that was to choose the cradle-to-cradle principle as the guiding framework for eco-designing our products and running our activities. So there are two main positive impacts that result from the circular economy. First, it allows us to reduce the pressure on natural material, on raw materials, sorry. The closed-loop approach at Tarkett ensures that flooring material can get recycled into new products. That not only involves clean installation of cut recycling, but that goes as far as the post-consumer flooring. Oops. Closing the loop on carpet tiles allows to reduce the same material over and over from the backing to the yarn. And in order to do that, the carpet tiles are designed for disassembly from the onset, and we use recyclable materials. At Tarkett, we have developed a breakthrough technology to disassemble carpet tiles and recycle the eco-based backing directly into our production. And we set a partnership with Aquafil for recycling the separated yarn in new ECONYL fibers that can be reintroduced in new product. So we are now able to fully recycle carpet tiles in a unique way in Europe. Secondly, recycling allows us to reduce carbon emissions. If we look at Tarkett homogeneous flooring vinyl products, they can now be recycled at different stages. Post-production, of course, post-installation stage, which are the vinyl off cuts from the installation. Post-consumer flooring waste recycling is one of the biggest challenge. This is technically very complex because floor coverings are glued on the floor, and when you tear them off, it comes with the concrete and the glue residues. Moreover, you have uncertainties and you have no visibility on the chemical contents of old floors. Now Tarkett can recycle post-consumer of phthalate-free homogeneous vinyls, as we are able to clean the old floor from concrete and glue. Old vinyl floor can now become new floors. And we are working as well to develop loose lay solutions that make on top easy the installation and the renovation. Recycling vinyl floor, as I mentioned, has a clear impact to avoid carbon emission. This is measurable, and that's a study that was driven by IVL Research Institute in Sweden. And the institute estimates that for 1 ton of vinyl recycled, we can avoid 2 tons of CO2 emissions. So all that is a little bit difficult to realize, but when we take a global perspective, we have as well very good insights on how circular economy can be beneficial to the climate. At group level, in 2019, we recycled different raw materials, post-use, the recycled material that we find on the market for our product, and we were able to avoid 270,000 tons of CO2 emissions. It's very important because it shows the potential. For us, those CO2 emissions avoided represent more than the CO2 emission of all Tarkett factories that same year. So it's very important, and we can measure it because we have since long time started our journey. So now looking at the future, we have 2 main objectives we want to achieve by 2030. We want to triple the recycled content in our product compared to 2018, and we want to reduce by 30% our carbon emissions compared to 2020, which we are close to this to know exactly where we are. So these objectives are really key milestones for Tarkett, and we are further developing our journey for contributing to European Commission climate neutrality objective by 2050. So to summarize, for a flooring manufacturer like Tarkett, recycling material into new product is probably the best way towards climate change mitigation. There is still a lot to do. We will find hurdles on the journey that will be difficult. We will have to find solutions, but indeed, that's the way we need to go, and that's where the management of Tarkett is mobilized for. And we need as well to engage in the conversation with our industry to find partners, because that's not a way we can go alone. We need to work together on the circular economy. And that's why I'm very listening to him carefully, his views on the topic, on the scale of a building.
Thank you very much. So if you could unshare your screen now, Myriam.
Yes.
So thank you very much for that. Just a couple of questions. So is Tarkett committing to being a circular business by a certain year, the entire business? Do you have an objective for that?
That's the vision we have, to become more and more circular. Of course, it will take time to reach that level. So that's why for us, the 2030 objective is a clear milestone, because before 2030, we need to implement all the new technologies that will support further development and further circularity.
And what's your definition of the circular economy then? For somebody who doesn't know what the concept means, how do you explain circular economy?
Circular economy is an economy where waste does not exist anymore, and where all materials are kept in circulation, and where we keep the value of the materials. And of course, Tarkett has as well its own how to say, conception of the circular economy, is that it should be a healthy circular economy for people and the environment.
And you mentioned that you have some technologies to allow you to recycle fibers and to clean the bits of concrete from the flooring that you dig up and the glue. Mm-hmm. How does that work? How do you separate the glue and the concrete? Is it a trade secret, or can you tell us a little bit about how you actually managed to make these old materials into something that you can use again?
It's a kind of home secret, but indeed that was really the complicated thing, because the concrete and the glue residues might contain some unknown substances, and as well they can impair the machinery behind, because they can be very abrasive. So we develop a cleaning process that allows us to really clean, and it's true, the backing of the floor we recovered from deconstruction work or renovation.
And obviously, flooring is just one part of a building. So tell us a little bit more about how you're working with partners and architects to help them achieve circularity in the entire construction project. And obviously, this is a leading into speaking to Adam in a few minutes.
Yeah. What we do as well, is that we need to engage at an early stage of projects. So we work with architects, environmental bureau, building design companies and developers, and we explain to them how we make our products to make them circular, and we invite them as well to ask for more circular products and to ask in their contract for take-back systems, for ensuring that the flooring waste at the installation and later on in the future after the use stage will be recovered. And we can do that thanks to our Restart program.
And the whole topic of the circular economy is being talked about more and more. Are you finding it easier now to have conversations about the importance of circularity, about the importance of carbon neutrality, or do you find there's still resistance both in the industry and among your clients?
I think everybody is keen on working on circular economy, but when it comes to acting for circular economy, we still need a pull on the market, and that's where indeed the collaboration is important, is that we need public procurement to really be on board circular economy and ask for circular products and ask for take-back systems. We need more relationship with architects so that they really start thinking the circularity of the buildings. And I'm curious to listen to Adam now on that, because that's how we can work together. And as it is in the design phase of a building that will create the circular buildings, that's very important that we have a strong connection and to ensure that the material that are selected can be recycled, reused later on. We are keen as well to share the data, to share information, because circular economy requires as well more transparency in the supply chain.
And just one more question before we go over to Adam. Again, for people who aren't familiar with the brand Tarkett, tell us a little bit about what you do, what your products are, where in the world you operate. I was on your website earlier and I didn't realize that you do football pitches as well. You do outdoor surfaces.
Exactly.
So tell us a little about what Tarkett is and what it does.
Yes, so Tarkett is a French company based in Paris. It evolved from family-owned business to a global multinational the last 140 years. So it's a very old company. And we operate on the different markets in the United States, in Europe, in Asia. We are really specialized in everything a customer can desire for indoor surfaces, flooring, except the ceramics. And indeed, we have an activity as well on sport surfaces for outdoor. But we cover vinyl, carpet tiles, and broadloom. We cover as well linoleum, wood for education, home, hospitals, for schools, and we are probably everywhere we can imagine we are spending time in a building.
And you work both with architects and directly with customers, so it's both contracts and retail.
Yeah, exactly. That's as well what make working at Tarkett very rich and very interesting, is that we work from the start to the end of a project, because our customers and our partners might be architects, bureau d'études, distributors, installers. So every time we need to answer to their needs, and the Restart program is as well a way for us to support our installers in making their own transition towards a circular economy, because at the end, the circular economy is not for a university. That will be really down to earth, and that will have to be implemented by everyone in the society. So we are really supporting our installers to help them ensure that we can get back the installation of cuts and more in the future, post-use vinyl. And we are doing it as well already with carpet tiles.
Okay, and we're going to go and speak to Adam now in London. But first of all, why did Tarkett invite Adam onto this talk? What's your relationship with Adam and Perkins and Will? Have you worked on projects together? Are you both pushing in the same direction in terms of circularity?
Yes, I think Perkins and Will is one of the largest architects firms. They have strong convictions about sustainability and circular economy. We have our products in some of their projects in different countries, and but we see Perkins and Will as a company which can influence the business, and we look for learning from them, and we look as well for understanding what they need. And I think exchanging together today was a good way to start this discussion together with Adam.
Okay, that's a great introduction to you, Adam. We're looking forward to learning from you. So first of all, Adam, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are and what you do.
Sure. So I'm a principal here at Perkins and Will in our London office, and we're based in Whitechapel. We're, I think, one of the largest architectural practices in the world at the moment. And my team mainly focuses on working for landlords, developers, and end users and occupiers. So the large organisations that occupy many of the larger buildings around Europe are the type of clients that we work with. We're doing workplace strategy with them, and also developing design solutions for their workplaces, for hotels, hospitality environments, and also educational public sector environments as well. So a real kind of cross sector of projects, and we work from Dublin across to Middle East from our London studio.
And in the work that you do, how much is the circular economy a part of the conversations that you're having? How much is it something that clients are asking for? How much is it something that you're discussing in the office?
It hasn't been enough of a part of the conversation, unfortunately, up until this point. I think the architectural industry has done great work from a sustainability perspective. And certainly architecture has really moved on a lot in the last 15 years or so from a position of putting sustainability at the heart of what it does. The work that we do in a more corporate interiors market hasn't probably evolved as much as we'd like to, and we really need to. Now is the time to really pivot to having that as a focus. And I think sustainability has been talked about, but really considering circular design from a full life cycle of a project is something which is quite new in terms of what we do. And it really has to require a whole new way of approaching design compared to how we presented schemes previously, where we were only really interested in how great it looked when the project opened. We have to go much further than that. We have to think about the full life cycle of everything we do now.
Okay, it's probably a good point for you to share your screen and give us your presentation.
Yeah, let's see if this works. Okay. You guys see that?
Mm-hmm.
Great. So I guess the first couple of slides here is just talking about the problem. Everyone knows that global warming or global heating really is a huge problem. In the UK, we produced 830 megatons of CO2 last year. So it's a lot of carbon into our footprint. We need a lot of trees in order to offset that amount of carbon, and offsetting isn't the answer. We need to reduce our carbon footprint, and we need to do it drastically, and we need to do it quickly. And the environment that we're in, that Myriam and I work in, the built environment, is I think globally the largest contributor to our carbon footprint. So this is a UK number, 40%, but it's pretty consistent globally that the built environment is contributing to around 40% of the carbon emissions globally. I think second to the built environment is actually food, and that's about 25%, I think. So you know, we are a big part of the problem, and so we need to change in order to really help with the increase in temperatures that we're seeing. And obviously the UK government have made some pledges in the last few years in terms of our targets for 2050. That applies to new buildings in terms of being zero carbon by 2030. And you can imagine a large building can take 10 years to even get out of the ground from design to construction. And so, you know, these are real targets that are really applicable to the work that we're doing now. These aren't things that we need to worry about in the future. They're things that we need to do right now. And so, you know, this really kind of just hammers home the importance of this subject and how much of a contributor our industry is to the problem effectively. When we're talking about carbon in the built environment, without getting too technical, we talk about two aspects of it. We talk about operational carbon, and that can really be seen to be the energy used to run the buildings that we have. So we're moving much more to a decarbonised grid here in the UK, and there's been some great work in that area, and more buildings are being built and developed which are electric only and built off renewable energy and run off renewable energy, and therefore operational carbon has really come down, and there's a great potential for it to come down further. But embodied carbon for us is really where the challenge is, and that's all the carbon that it takes to make the stuff that we have and the carbon that's involved in where that goes in the future. So when you look at a building, a big construction, there's huge amounts of embodied carbon within that building, and that's the area for us that we really need to focus on from a design perspective as architects. And a big part of this, as Myriam said, is really making sure that everyone can work together. You know, we work with developers right through to supply chain members, and you know, the guys who are doing the guys and girls who are doing the really hard work of building the buildings, the subcontractors, the suppliers. They're the ones that we need to engage with the most, because they're the ones that know the most about how we can reduce waste, how we can build in a more efficient and more effective way. So at Perkins and Will, we're spending a lot of time engaging with all the different facets of our community to see where we can make improvements. And as a global organisation, it's our responsibility to kind of work hard and see what improvements we can make. One of the things which is really interesting for us is that strategically, there's a coalescence between adaptability as circular design, but also what clients want. We know that all the clients that we speak to, one of their biggest drivers is around adaptability. So much change happens now. We can see what's happened this year, but every organization, every type of business, every family really is going through huge changes constantly now. And so the need for adaptability in architecture is really inherent to every brief that we do. And that's adaptability is one of the core functions of circular design. Making sure we can make spaces which are more adaptable and therefore require less carbon to make changes to. So there's a great synergy here between what businesses want and how we need to design in the future. It makes a much easier conversation for us when we're trying to talk about these things with our clients. A big part of our approach now, and a real change, is designing for disassembly and considering reversible design. So for hundreds of years, architects have drawn thousands of drawings on projects of how that building goes together. And that's been great. But now we also need to have a set of drawings that show how that building comes apart. So we're drawing for a building coming together, and we're drawing for a building being taken apart. And that's something that is a big change in the industry, is to really consider as much as how things go together as how they are disassembled in the future. And it takes a whole new kind of consideration for design and construction and the industry in terms of the systemic way that the industry works from a manufacturing perspective. Another kind of pivotal consideration is understanding that every building that we deliver or every project we deliver is just a resource for the future. So rather than thinking of buildings or interiors as the kind of the end of that product's value, it's actually thinking about every building that we've ever done as a kind of DIY store for the next project and the next project and the next project. And when you consider buildings as material banks and you consider them as storage vehicles for the future, it really changes the type of materiality that you consider using and the construction methods that you think about in terms of how buildings are going to be built. So it's a really important part of kind of reconsidering how we design more circular spaces. But we still need beauty. There's a lot of circular design that is about kind of rigor, it's about geometry, it's about components, it's about structure, it's about modularity. And that's great, that's efficient, but we also need to make sure that we can still keep beauty in the spaces that we deliver that work within those kind of rules that become more efficient. And it does at the moment potentially mean a whole new aesthetic. So, you know, when we're truly trying to deliver net zero carbon interiors, the palette of resources and materials that are available to us becomes less. in our industry, in architecture and design, we've had kind of 20 years of amazing development of really interesting materials. There's so much choice, there's so much selection, and a lot of that goes into projects. But in the future, a lot of those materials won't necessarily be the right type of materials for us to be using. And so we know as designers that we may have a smaller palette to work from for a period of time until the supply chain starts to really center on making sure that everything they put into the market is really considered from a sustainability perspective. And at that point, our choices will grow. So it's about being it's about being creative with the materials that we have that are available to us, and the techniques that we know are really thorough and really authentic when it comes to sustainable design. And we know that there's been great development in areas such as furniture design, carpet manufacturers, flooring manufacturers like Tarkett have done amazing work over the last 20 years when it comes to cradle delivery. Fashion organizations and apparel companies are doing some wonderful work in terms of developing products which are more circular in their design and using recycled materials in more interesting ways. So we're hoping that some of that innovation and some of that development and some of that focus starts to play out in construction materials more and more over the next couple of years. And the thing that we've done at Perkins and Will is to make a pledge and a manifesto in that we're completely pivoting how we design interior spaces to put circular design at the heart of what we do. And it means a whole new mindset for our designers in terms of how we consider projects. If you're designing a project to be taken apart from the beginning, you design it in a very different way. And our target is to be able to deliver net zero interiors by 2030. It's 10 years. It seems like a long time, but there's a long way to go for us to be able to do that because of the full life cycle that we have to understand from where a resource comes from the ground to through its manufacturing process, its installation, and then where it goes in the future, which is a really big part of this, is how we can avoid everything being recycled, but really look at reuse as well as recycling as a solution. So it's a real full life cycle analysis we have to do on every single one of our projects. And it's a challenge that the guys are really, focused on, and it's important to work, as I say, with supply chain in order to make that happen. I think that's the end of my presentation. Now I'll stop sharing.
Thanks very much. So there's this goal of net zero embodied carbon by 2030, as you said at the beginning of your talk. Sometimes a project can take 10 years from the initial green light to it being finished. So you have to start on that now then, don't you? What are you actually putting in place already? Were you working on your first phase of net zero carbon buildings already?
We've done some great work in the past, especially in architecture. As I say, in interiors, we've been a bit behind, and so therefore that's where a lot more of our focus is. We've put in place a number of processes. So a big part of it is supply chain engagement, is really working with the contractors and suppliers to make sure that we have the partners and the resources to meet our goals. We're doing a life cycle analysis of every project that we work on now, which is something new to our practice. So every time we do a design, we will do a full analysis of everything that goes into that building to be able to understand the carbon impact of that, and then to be able to make a series of recommendations to the client as to how we can reduce that. So every time we capture that information on a project, we'll be able to learn from the next project and the next project. We're focusing on reduction of materials that we use in the hope that by this time next year we'll be able to deliver projects which are purely from 100% recycled materials and 50% materials that can be recycled. And every year we want that number to grow till we get to a point where we can specify products which are 100% recycled and 100% able to be recycled in the future. So we have to set those targets. And we're about to launch a new database for suppliers who can go onto it and input their information in order to be on our selection list for materials. We already have a global transparency list, which is a large global database about material health. So that database collects materials which are healthy, low VOCs, come from good provenance in terms of their supply chain. And that enables our designers to know that they're specifying in confidence. We're going to be launching a similar system which focuses on products and materials that come from a more circular perspective. So all these kind of processes give us, our designers, the tools and architects the tools to be able to make confident decisions when it comes to design and specification. So there's a lot of groundwork to be done to get anywhere near the targets that we're setting.
Quite a lot going on then. You both in your talks, you both mentioned the phrase cradle to cradle. What does that mean to both of you? Myriam, maybe you could give your definition of cradle to cradle first.
Cradle to cradle is a philosophy, and it's a philosophy that can be implemented. It's a systematic approach that starts with selecting good materials, eco-designing products to prepare for circularity. And it is as well a framework where from the start, the raw materials, you always keep in mind the environmental impact. And that's exactly the steps I explained in my first slide, that it starts with eco-design, with good materials, then you have the operations, but you need to prepare and to think about the end of use. And that's not only for us. We don't only use cradle to cradle because of certification of products. We use it because that's how we push the limits and we push the boundaries, and we improve the way our products are designed and how we can further recycle them.
And Adam, is that the same? Do you have a similar definition, cradle to cradle? What does it mean to you?
Yeah, I think for architects, cradle to cradle is probably less kind of part of our process. It's something that we expect and hope from our supply chain, that their products follow that process. For us, I think a similar approach, but more from a design perspective, is just about adaptability, is about designing buildings that can change. Because if you think about, one of the examples I give is stud walls. So most buildings, most of the walls are made through stud, which is aluminium extrusions and plasterboard nailed together and painted and insulated, and is really well high performing. But the only way to change that wall is really to kind of smash it down. And you can recycle the aluminium and you can recycle plasterboard, but that's completely uncircular in terms of a design solution. And every building in the world has a lot of stud wall in it. And every time you want to change it, you have to smash it down. And so we need to focus on the components of buildings which are underperforming from a circular perspective, and work on new ways of delivering the same performance for our clients, but in a way that's much more circular. So a new way of making partitions and developing cellular space within buildings can become much more adaptable, much more circular, will reduce waste, will reduce embodied carbon through change, and also will be designed for disassembly so that those components can be taken apart and used again in the future. So, really focusing on these elements of a building which are kind of traditional legacy solutions from construction, and looking at how we can improve those is a big focus of the work that we're doing. And offsite manufacturing will be a big part of that, in order to, you can be much more efficient when you build something in a factory than you can on a building site. And so that kind of moving away from on-site construction is going to be a big part of the improvements we can make in terms of just material efficiency alone.
And this idea of reversible design, or looking at a building as a you used the term like a DIY store or a bank of materials. I mean, there's two ways you can look at that. One is that you can take elements of the building and just reuse them, maybe bricks or bits of steel or whatever. But I suppose with flooring, because it wears out, you can't take the flooring up and put it in a different building. You have to do what Myriam was explaining, like take it back to its material components. Is that a fair assessment of how things are? Myriam, can you ever imagine a flooring that would last forever, and you just take it out of one building and you put it in the other? Is there, or will you always have to disassemble it?
I think we have not found a solution for pushing life of anything. So there are some limits, but the fact that we can recycle, indeed, circular economy has a hierarchy. You start to reuse, you remanufacture, and at the end, you recycle. You need to consider that our products are not furniture. They are on the floor. It is the floor, and in some application, in some businesses, the floor remains for 10, 20, 30 years. So at the end of 30 years, you cannot reuse it, but it needs to be recycled. So that's the way it is. We have as well some views, and we need to be very cautious with the reuse. I know reuse is very popular. Everybody sees it as a solution, but we need to be very careful on the warranty and on the risk of contamination. If we have a carpet, you never know how it has been maintained and what type of products have been used for cleaning them. So you need to really be cautious on what happened to the product during the lifetime. And I think it will be a balance. There will be some product that will be we will have the possibility to reuse and reinstall somewhere else. That's great for modular products, for instance. But for products that have a functionality that is extremely technical, like in a operation theater, in a hospital, I think we will need to keep the solutions for recycling.
Yeah.
So it's a balance in the future of the building and construction.
And it's designing those products to make sure that they can be recycled in as least an intensive way as possible. That, you know, that's where a lot of effort has to be taken. For example, you know, carpet tiles don't have to be stuck down. They can be put down with tape effectively, which is a much easier process of them recycling. And so, you know, trying to think about reducing the intensity of the recycling process through the design of the product in the first place is a big part of the development that happened. I think one of the things is, like, often products are actually designed and they last longer than their intended use. You know, if you think about a restaurant, maybe it's got a lifespan of 5 years, for example, but the chairs in there would last for 10 or 15 years. And so actually, as architects and designers, we need to be delivering strategies that allow spaces to change so that the things in them are still relevant to the use of that space or that building for a longer period of time. And we don't just have these short life cycle runs and then that's the end of that supposed usefulness of a product or a service, and it goes into landfill, it goes into an intensive recycling waste stream. So I think trying to design spaces that have a longer usefulness and therefore the products within them become relevant for longer is a kind of strategic challenge for architects, because often, you know, this products are just, they last longer than people want to use them for. And, you know, building in obsolescence is not a great way of us developing the industry.
In flooring, I was going to give the example of like a Persian rug. You put a Persian rug on your floor and then you decide you don't like the rug anymore. So you roll it up and you sell it, or you put it in the storage, and then someone else buys the rug, and the rug can last like 100 years and it starts to get a bit threadbare. But as you say, Myriam, of course, you couldn't really put Persian rugs in an operating theatre. Especially ones that had been already used somewhere else. But the point Adam was making is a kind of a point about newness in a way, isn't it? Like, there's an expectation that you have new stuff all the time. Do you think we're going to need, and can you see the possibility that people will start to value things that have been around a bit already, as long as they're clean and have got certification and not harboring bugs or chemicals or anything like that? Do you think we're going to have to change the way we view the newness of our surroundings?
I mean, I personally think we are. I think, you know, technology is a great example. You know, the speed of which we change our mobile phones, you know, and the encouragement that manufacturers make in order for us to change our mobile phones by, you know, potentially making them obsolescent after short periods of time is an example of, you know, just how quick we like new things. And I think people are more accepting now of products and materials that have had a past life, and hopefully that's a return to you know, it's a, you know, well-known Dieter Rams saying, but less but better. You know, we might have less stuff, but it'll be better stuff. It'll be better quality. It will last for longer. It maybe would have a patina that will have more kind of meaning to spaces. But I think certainly, you know, and in fashion, you know, the sites that are around at the moment for people to kind of trade secondhand clothes is really growing, and there's much more kind of acceptance in people wearing garments that have had a previous life. So there's certainly if you're going to wear something, you definitely would want to sit on something. So I think there definitely will be sensibilities where people won't always chase the new, you know, and that there will be value in reuse and recycling of products more and more in the future, I think. And people will see, you know, that maybe the odd scratch here or there is a minor price to pay for, you know, the benefit of something staying in the flow for longer.
Do you both have opinions about plastics position in the circular economy? It's been quite contentious in my experience. Some people, for example, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, think that plastic has an important role to play in circularity, because if you treat it right and you choose the right kinds of plastics, they can be used again and again and again. But other people are quite clear about it. They don't think there's any role for plastic whatsoever in anything. Do you have you have opinions on that?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I can start. Plastic indeed has there are the two sides of a coin for plastic. Yeah, you have the bad image of plastics today with the plastic packaging and what the mismanagement of waste that happen in our countries, overseas, which is a real issue because that's where we pollute the planet and where we are in endangering biodiversity with all the consequences we know. The plastic have as well an important role to play, and especially in building and construction. Because plastic are versatile, they have properties that allow so technical improvement. For instance, in hospitals, having plastic material on flooring had been helping for hygiene more than ceramic with joints, for instance, and they are long-lasting. They have as well some light properties because they are less heavy than some other materials as well. So I think there is a room for plastic as long as we keep them in buildings. And that's as well the potential of the circular economy to ensure that at the end of life, we will find a way to recollect them and recycle them. So to me, there is room for plastics, but we need to use them and to produce them in a responsible way. And that's what Tarkett is doing with the vinyl floor coverings. We know there are some discussions about vinyl, but we try to do our best to make it in a responsible way. And that's why we committed to substitute controversial substances, secure the process of production, select and partners with our suppliers for continuously improving the performance of the materials and the safety. We as well feel it is so important to make sure that vinyl keeps in circular flows with healthy materials, that we have indeed addressed all the critiques that were on vinyl. And to us, it is an ideal material for the building and construction, provided that it is produced responsibly as Tarkett is doing.
Adam?
I mean, I'm not probably an expert on plastic in the way that Myriam would be. I mean, I think plastics gets a bad rep because of consumer recycling. You know, the waste that we accumulate in our day-to-day lives, and it does feel like from a consumer perspective, we've relied on recycling too much and always thought that was a great thing. Like, yeah, I recycle all of my stuff at home, so I'm a good person. And in fact, the manufacturers of that stuff should be spending more effort on innovation so that those things can be reused rather than recycled. You know, companies like Target are spending a lot of time looking at recycling and reuse and reducing the friction in that process. But when I throw away a water bottle, you know, like it's going to take a lot of carbon to put that water bottle back into any sort of useful product, raw product. Or maybe it makes me feel good by putting it in the recycling bit rather than the waste bit, but actually that's not a solution. And, you know, we need to find ways for all of those consumer plastics to be reused initially rather than just recycled. And, you know, so potentially because it's a very human thing and we're touching that stuff every day, that's why it gets a particularly bad reputation. But if you dive into the science behind it, like Myriam would, you see there are actually benefits to it in certain applications.
Mm.
Adam, you mentioned adaptability of buildings, and I guess you must both be seeing or listening to or being involved in a lot of conversations about how buildings need to be used differently because of the coronavirus pandemic. How does that affect what both of you are doing? What changes is that leading to in the way people use buildings, and how can the work that you do facilitate adaptability?
Do you want me to go first?
Well, yeah, sure. Sorry, I should have named one of you.
Yeah. I mean, it's a really. I mean, I think fundamentally the coronavirus has, although clearly a horrific process, it has, I think, pushed the sustainability agenda a lot in certainly the clients that we speak to. I think people, you know, there's been a reset in some ways, and that's been really beneficial from an environmental perspective when it comes to architecture. So I feel that, you know, if there could be a good silver lining, I'm not sure there could be, but, you know, there's definitely some benefits there. I think people now, we just need to use buildings in a way that isn't one-dimensional. You know, you can't have a shop that's just a shop for 30 years. You know, it needs to be able to be designed to be something else. The Excel Centre is a really good example. You know, that's a conference centre that was a hospital for a period of time. It wasn't designed in that way initially. If it had been designed to be more flexible, maybe that would have been an easier process. But it was quite, you know, the team that was involved in that project did an amazing job to kind of adapt that building from an event centre to be in a hospital for 6 months. But maybe that was more luck than judgment. We don't necessarily bake those things in at the starts of projects. I think, you know, we've always kind of we've sectorized buildings, and you know, I don't think that's going to be possible so much in the future. You know, there's a lot of effort at the moment that's converting, for example, commercial spaces into residential spaces, because we know there's a lack of good quality, affordable city centre housing, and there will be more available commercial space. And so lots of those buildings will be adapted, but they won't have been designed to do that. So if we can think about those things when we're designing buildings initially, it's going to help when we do want to change the use of those buildings to react to whatever the market is saying at that point.
What about you, Myriam? What's your experience of this?
So we saw two questions came with the COVID. First was indeed for healthcare, how to clean, how to maintain hygiene, and how should we use a biocide, should we disinfect more? And we had a lot of questions from our customers to help them adapt their cleaning protocols. So that was the first impact for us. So really a concern on how to make sure we have the right hygiene practices in hospitals, for instance. The second one that is important for us and is as well, what is the future of workplace? We see home office developing. We see as well more flexible office needed, and we are extremely serious about that. We made own surveys on the topic, and we made our own study on the future of workplace. For us, workplace will continue, but that will be different. And as Adam said, it should be more flexible, easy to work from different places. And as well, we need to prepare for adapting more to the dimension of offices, the number of people, the flexibility. And for that, I think the modularity of product is extremely important. And that's what we can provide with modular flooring solutions, for instance. But
Adam,
that were the two sectors that were really affected by the COVID.
And Adam, talking about adaptability and reversibility and those themes you talked about, you also mentioned that this would lead to a whole new aesthetic. But what will the city of the future or the building of the future look like then? Will it look radically different? I mean, obviously we designed to be taken apart and to be flexible, but what will it look like formally?
I wish I knew that. I mean, I think timber is going to play quite a big part in the conversation initially. You know, we're already seeing some great strides in the development of construction techniques using timber, mass timber, on a large scale. Timber's great because it grows and it also sequesters carbon, and it's a kind of very traditional building material, but there's been a lot of innovation in using timber from a structural perspective. The fire safety issues there's been lots of innovation in those areas. So I think you could certainly see in the short to medium term a lot more kind of timber intensive buildings. And there's already a number of large scale developments happening across Europe which put timber kind of at the center of that as a construction technique. And I think when it comes to interiors as well, you will see more timber replacing the aluminium or the plasterboard, or the other kind of man-made materials that we've used a lot, the ceramics maybe, that we've used in the last kind of like 20 or 30 years. So I think you could say that the future will be timber for a period of time, but I think that there's already lots of innovative man-made materials or part man-made, part natural materials that are being developed, and those probably quite early in their kind of commercialization growth. But they'll become more and more available for people to use. in the future. And I think, you know, we're at Perkins and Will, we're certainly trying to kind of champion some of the smaller suppliers. One of the challenges we've always had with materiality is like, you know, companies like Myriam do amazing work, but big companies, it's quite easy to kind of like to get materials certified, to promote them, to get all the kind of health and safety and fire and all of that kind of stuff. It's a lot of effort. It goes to go through the process, and there's a lot of investment that companies like Target make to go through that process. And sometimes that precludes some smaller firms who are also making really, really authentically good products and solutions, but they don't have the investment to go through that kind of complicated accreditation process. So, you know, we want to be looking at those smaller firms who are doing really good things, as well as the companies who can afford to invest in amazing solutions as well. So, you know, I think there will be a growth out of this, and we'll become to a point where maybe buildings are looking more like they have done traditionally, because we have more choice. But certainly like a more authentic aesthetic, you know, the visibility of connections is a big part of design for reversibility, is like being able to see how things have gone together so you can see how they go apart. That's part of it. And people actually, you know, kind of want that. That's a prevailing aesthetic that's been around for a while, but maybe it hasn't been around for the right reasons. And in the future, it will be here because there's an authentic reason to build in that way, to build in a more honest way.
Mm-hmm.
Myriam, do you have a view on that? What's around the corner in terms of new materials and new ways buildings will be put together and the way they might even look?
I think there is a big trend for supporting the modularity of building with the modularity of product. So that's why we have modular flooring solutions. There is a need as well for supporting quicker renovation. So that's why we develop a loose-lay solution, even for products that are sold in rolls. The need for bio-based material is clear, and it is already set in some pieces of regulation that are developing in Europe. For instance, in France, we have RE 2020, which makes a big room for timber and for bio-based materials. Of course, we cannot imagine everything can switch to bio-based due to constraints on resource again. So there will be to find a balance and a way as well to be more creative and innovative when it comes to reduce the carbon footprint of materials. That's very important, and how we can develop more recycled materials, whether recycled from bio-based, from biomass, or from waste. And that's indeed something Tarkett is working on. And we have launched a new vinyl range that is produced with recycling of bio-based waste from the wood industry into new vinyls, which is a new way as well to use the waste from biomass. It has an impact, of course, on the carbon footprint of the product. So all in all, I think it will be a balance to adapt and to find the solutions that help keeping the technical performance, having the less carbon embodied for the building, and choosing the materials. Regarding aesthetic and design, we are at Tarkett indeed strongly committed as well to support architects and designers and supporting their creativity. So our products and the way we use today recycled content in our product is done without compromising the visual aspect of the products. So as long as we can continue this way, we will, and we will support the creativity of our customers, even with materials that are recycled. That's the case for the carpet. We use Econil, which is a recycled, regenerated yarn from Aquafil, and we still have beautiful carpets. So there is no contradiction in our business, indeed, regarding the design and the aesthetic and circular economy.
We have two good questions from our viewers to finish up with. Antonia asks, is the circular economy taught properly in education? And if not, how do we start introducing the idea at that level? Myriam, maybe you could answer that first of all. Are young designers or even just ordinary students being introduced to the idea of the circular economy effectively? And if not, what more could we do to put it on the agenda?
I think there is a lot to do. Educating engineers, designers, and even school children on environmental topics, climate topics, and circular economy, of course, would be one aspect. But there is really a huge program to be developed by the government, but it's as well how we as industry can support each other in our sphere of influence to deliver and to explain how we do things, because you learn we learn from the others. And I think that today there is no academic knowledge about circular economy because it's so new that the experience is acquired by doing things. And I think the challenge for our society is to accelerate the pace so that we do not wait for the academic knowledge, but we can implement and nurture the cross-fertilization of the sectors, of the people with those new concepts.
Adam?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know really what they're teaching in design schools at the moment when it comes to circular design. I think we as an industry could do more to, there's a number of things that we need to improve in our industry around this, around diversity and inclusion. And we could probably do more in terms of connecting with educational bodies on that. I mean, I think the other thing is also just trying to take less value away from things. There's like designing, there's understanding circular design, but there's also the kind of value that we put on new stuff all the time. And that's going to have to change a little bit as well. And I think that the generations that are in education at the moment have a hugely greater experience of these issues. They have much more passion around it. They have much more interest. They have much more knowledge than I certainly did when I was at art school. So, I think that is in itself a hugely important thing in terms of confidence, is that we know that the people that are learning to be designers in the next 5 and 10 years know that this is a massively important problem in a way that wasn't around when I certainly was learning to be a designer. And that's going to give amazing benefits, in the future.
And finally, obviously, this conversation has focused around interiors because that's what both of you specialize in. But Mimi asks, how do you see this conversation being applied to industrial or product design? Do you have any views on that? Circularity of products. We talked about phones being thrown away, having a very short lifestyle. What more could be done to encourage industrial designers or the industrial design world to be more circular? Adam, I'm looking at you. Adam, you don't know I'm looking at you, but that's a question to you to start with, and then Myriam.
I mean, it's really hard because it's like it's commercialism versus this, right? It'd be great to have an iPhone for 10 years, but it's not great. It's not great for Apple to have so there's just a massive tension between those two elements. But I do think, like automotive design has, started to move a little bit into that area in terms of like more component modular driven. I think the sharing stuff is a big part of it. Whether it lasts for a year or 2 years, how many people use that resource is a big part of it. Car sharing for me was always a really simple idea of understanding that most people's cars just sit on the pavement. It's certainly in London, they just sit on the pavement for years and years, depreciating in value. And car sharing frees up that value. So I think actually sharing of resource as much as the kind of design for future use of that resource is as important. If we all shared one thing rather than had each of them to ourselves, it would be a lot less stuff around the world. So I think that there's how we can design so that obsolescence isn't kind of built in is just that's a kind of ethical thing, I think. But there's also trying to find ways. There's really great initiatives in Australia and Italy and the UK at the moment around kind of sharing cafes, fixing cafes, where people are, trying to come together to learn how to repair what they have or to share what they have, so that we elongate, the lifespan of those things. So I think those things are as important as the kind of design part initially.
Well, I dropped my iPhone in the summer and was told, and smashed the back, and was told by Apple that if I smashed the front, they could fix it, but you cannot repair the back of a phone because all the components are glued to the glass panel at the back. The only solution was to get a new phone, which seems really crazy. Yeah. Myriam, do you have an opinion on this?
Well, I think eco-designing, there are some already known methodologies, and that's why we choose, for instance, Cradle to Cradle, which is now becoming a mindset. It's a lot of education. It's a lot of, as well, of how we see our personal life in the society and how we are pushed to new things and so on. So I would say it could be the revenge of the thrift shop in a way. But we really need to have conscious of our impact. And again, as Adam said, it's a balance between consumerism and environmental consciousness. And that belongs to everyone. You do not need to read books, it's common sense. And in how it's how we see our role in the society within the environment. Repairable. This is indeed steps that are taken in the new laws that will come, repair, refurbishment, and so on. And but that's as well how we as citizens, we start to think twice before buying a new stuff. So it's both design and behavior.
Brilliant. Thank you both very much, Myriam and Adam. And sorry, we had some more questions coming at the last minute, but I don't think we have time for them. Sorry about that, everyone. Thank you so much. It's been great to speak to you both, and keep up the good work.
Thank you very much.
Take care, everyone. Thank you.